The doctrine of double effect has some pretty ancient roots going all the way back to the 1200s with St. Thomas Aquinas, but it still has a tremendous amount of importance in contemporary ethical decisions in all kinds of fields, especially though within the medical field. And so what we are going to do is unpack it, see how it applies to different scenarios, and see if it can help us solve this question that we've gotten ourselves into. So there is a ton of practical import to this doctrine of double effect, and whether or not we endorse it, but like the kinds of questions that we're dealing with from an institutional level have to do with things like medical triage, right? Who do we help in emergency situations if there's a mass casualty event? Individual stuff like, is doctor-assisted suicide going to be permissible? What about certain kinds of abortions in order to save the pregnant person's life? As self-driving cars become more and more autonomous, there's going to be like some engineer at some point that like programs this car to either save people or kill people, it seems like. There's all kinds of cases like this. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005, I want to say, the big hospital in New Orleans, it lost power. And they had backup generators that were running, but like those generators were going to like run out of gas soon. And so they needed to start evacuating people who were on various forms of life support, you know, maybe a ventilator, you know, breathing machine or things to help their heart beat or filter blood or whatever. And like, okay, so you've got to like take these people up to the roof and then like evacuate them to a different hospital by helicopter. Well, who do you take? Do you take the people who need the help the most, right? Who need the intervention the most? Or do you take the people who are the most likely to survive the transportation, over to this new facility? And the way that medical triage is run right now, you save the people that are kind of the easiest to save first. There's a really interesting case here. I used to judge for this thing called the Bioethics Bowl. And they would get these like real life cases of, like actual like medical decisions that had to be made. And there was a guy who like came into the emergency room and he was unconscious. And, when they, got his shirt off to like go to work on him, there was a big tattoo across his chest that just said DNR, right? Do not resuscitate. And they're like, okay, well, whoa, is this like an actual, because if it's a DNR order, like you're not allowed to like do intervention or anything like that. You're not allowed to like save this guy's life. Like it would be a violation of his, autonomy. And it turned out they did go ahead and work on the guy. And it turned out that like the reason he had that tattoo was because he lost a bet and had to get that like tattooed across his chest. So I guess like good on him for holding up his part of the bet, but good Lord, almost killed him. There's really, really interesting and crazy cases like this to think about. And so the practical stakes are really, really high. What the doctrine of double effect is about is when you are going to engage in some kind of action and it's going to have two foreseen outcomes. One that is, sort of a good outcome that you want to happen, and one that is a negative outcome that you wish wouldn't happen, but you can foresee is going to happen. Maybe a quick example here. So, let's say, I'm hiking or whatever, and I've got like two people with me and they both slide, and so they're both like hanging onto a cliff and I only have enough time to save one of them before a branch breaks, right? Whoever I decide to save, right, that's the good outcome. I've saved that person, but I can foresee that this other person is going to fall and, get hurt or killed. And I wish it wouldn't happen, but I can foresee that by saving this person, this other person is going to fall, and vice versa, right? If I save this person, that person's going to fall. So this is about, making a decision that has these two foreseeable outcomes, one positive, one negative. We're not talking here about like what you might call an opportunity cost for just like, so like if I go take a nap, I'm not able to like, do my homework or whatever. We're not talking about stuff like that. Everything kind of has an opportunity cost with it. We're talking about like real serious stakes, okay? And so in order for something to be permissible under this doctrine of double effect, it has to meet these four criteria that I'm stealing from the New Catholic Encyclopedia. The Catholic Church has, endorsed this doctrine or principle of double effect as like an important ethical principle for their community. And they've had like the most time to sort of think about and develop this principle, so that's why I'm kind of leaning on them. So let's talk about the first two. So the act itself must be morally good or at least indifferent. So in other words, like the positive outcome needs to at least outweigh the negative one, okay? And here's an important one. You cannot positively will the bad effect. So what we'd call this, so it's not as if like, oh, I'm going to make this bad thing happen, but like, oh, this good thing will happen too. Like, no. You are aiming for the good thing, right? It is your direct intention is the good effect, the positive effect. And the negative effect, the bad effect, is what we would call your oblique intention. It's still, this might seem a little bit like squirrely, but it is the case that like if I save this person, knowing full well that this other person's going to die, there is a real sense in which I did intend their death, right? Like, I mean, because I made a decision to save this other person, knowing full well this person was going to die. I wish it didn't happen. I don't intend it in the same way I intend to like eat a sandwich or whatever. So we would call it an oblique intention. And so what we're talking about here is your direct intention must be the good effect, okay? The good effect cannot be produced through the bad effect. So in other words, like the bad effect, the negative effect has to be like a later on result. I can't cause something bad to happen that then causes something good to happen. That's not how this works. Because then that would just be like making something bad happen that then later on had a good outcome. Like, no, that is not permissible on this view. And the good effect has to outweigh the bad effect. This feels really close to the first criterion, but that's the basic idea. So it's got to be all things considered good, and I've got to have my direct intent towards the good outcome, and I can't aim at the good through the bad. So those are the big things. So let's do some examples here. These are just sort of like standard examples that, everybody's going to give when they're talking about, the doctrine of double effect. So this is the difference between like a military bombing of a weapons facility or a military target versus like a terrorist bombing. So let's suppose that we've got a military target and, it's a weapons manufacturing facility or something like that. And we want to, strike it and blow it up. But it is surrounded by civilian housing. And so we can foresee that destroying this facility will kill the civilians in the surrounding area. Let's run it through our four criteria. Okay, so bombing the facility is morally good, right? Because it would shorten the war. So the good effect is going to outweigh the bad one. My direct intent is to destroy the facility. Okay, I can foresee that the civilian deaths are going to happen. I wish they wouldn't. If there was a way to do this without the civilian deaths, I would do that. But as it stands, this seems to be the only way to blow up this weapons facility. Again, my direct intent is to destroy the facility. My oblique intent is the civilian deaths. I am not aiming through the deaths to the facility, right? Like my bomb hits the facility and then later on the civilians die, right? That is what my goal is. I don't have to kill the civilians in order to blow up the facility. And so the fact that I'm saving more lives overall, all this seems to check all the right boxes. Compare this to like a terrorist bombing where the point is to like kill people. Now, we could even like make this, I don't know if you've ever played, I really like video games. So if you've ever played Final Fantasy VII, you start the game off like the opening like mission or whatever is, you are like a mercenary that has been hired by this terrorist group. They are a group of eco-terrorists and they are going to blow up, like an energy production facility. Now, their mission is a good one. Like, it is the case that this energy production facility is like draining the planet of this really important energy that it has and like destroying the world or whatever. But like, and they try to do it when nobody's there or whatever, but like, you could imagine, right, if they blow up this facility and like people die or whatever, like, this could be, if it is a genuine terrorist attack, like let's say I want to I want to make a huge explosion and kill a bunch of people in order to make a point. That is when it would not be permissible, right? Like, killing these people is the point, and then maybe later on, you know, the government in charge changes its climate policies and a bunch of lives are saved. Like, that's great and all, but that is not permissible on this doctrine because the deaths were a necessary part of that. I couldn't have done it without those civilian deaths. So even if it's a terrorist cause like you agree with, that maybe has like really good outcomes, it's not going to be permissible on this view. Now, this one's a little bit tricky, performing a hysterectomy. So here's the idea is, let's suppose we've got someone with some kind of cancerous tumor in their uterus, and the only way to save them is to perform a hysterectomy, where you remove the uterus. But let's add on to that this individual is also pregnant. This would actually be permissible. So let's think about what my direct intent is. I'm going in, I am removing this cancerous, mass, and the way that I have to do that is by removing this organ that, has the cancer on it. The death of the fetus is a foreseeable, but it's an oblique intent. I wish it wouldn't happen. I don't need the fetal death as part of this, but this is just the way the story kind of goes. So the fetal death kind of is just a direct result of the surgery, but the surgery is there to save the pregnant person's life. Now, this is where things can get a little bit squirrely. Let's suppose that there's an individual who has developed a pregnancy in the fallopian tube. And we can, maybe remove that section of the tube or remove the fallopian tube altogether. It kind of depends on where you are on this. A lot of people are going to say, well, not a lot of people, but some people are going to say that the Catholic Church, which uses the doctrine of double effect as a reason for not being able to perform an abortion, even to save the life of the pregnant person, that they are misapplying the doctrine of double effect. I'm not here to come down on that one way or the other, but there is a debate out there. So the idea here is that in order to save the pregnant person's life, you must kill the fetus, right? So the death of the fetus then is a necessary step on the way to saving the pregnant person's life. And so an ectopic pregnancy where the fetus is kind of stuck in this fallopian tube and will result in rupture and bleeding out. It is unclear whether an abortion is permissible in a case like this. What Thomas Aquinas was actually really interested in was cases of self-defense, and sort of just wars and things like that. When is it okay for a Christian who has this commandment to not kill? When is it okay for them to do that? And we want to be able to defend ourselves from an attacker. And on the doctrine of double effect, you can. So the idea is, okay, so let's say somebody's attacking you. There's no way to escape. And so we'll put this in modern days. You shoot the attacker and you kill them. Okay, saving your own life, morally good, check. Your direct intent, what is your direct intent? I take it that your direct intent is to stop the attacker, to make them stop attacking you. I am not trying to kill them, I'm trying to stop them. But their death does happen as a result of their, being stopped. So let's compare this to, like, let's say I leave a bunch of like money and jewels and really visible, in a really visible place with my window, like shade open. And I'm just like sitting in a rocking chair with a shotgun, like waiting for like somebody to break into my house. Cause like, I just really want to kill somebody or something like that. And, so finally somebody breaks in. I'm, hey, okay, time to rock and roll. Boom. That's a different case, right? Because now what is my direct intent? It was to kill that person. I invited the attack in just so that I could kill somebody. Now, maybe it's true that they would have killed me, but my intent is totally different in this scenario. So, and notice that, like, if I were to, shoot this person and they were to survive, I do not thereby have to finish them off or anything like that. If the attack is stopped without their death, and I can do that without their death, then that's fine, right? I don't need their death in order to, like, have this, outcome. So those are 3 cases of when the doctrine of double effect says, things are okay, things aren't. And so again, as long as I'm directly intending the good outcome, the positive outcome, and merely obliquely intending the negative outcome, then I'm good. And my direct action causes the good outcome, then I'm probably going to be good to go on the doctrine of double effect. There is still going to be a little bit of stuff up in the air, as we mentioned, but that's the basic idea. And you can kind of see how that might be applied to some of these cases that we've talked about. But in the next video, we're going to apply it to a really famous set of cases called trolley problems. I'll see you then.